So hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to 1.8.4.1. Now, just looking at this replay from last night, I did like a bit of a race weekend at COTA in the wet and at night, and I've got to be honest, watching this replay back, it was just absolutely phenomenal. Looking at the graphics, how they get the lens blur as well, like little bits of just sort of filaments on the screen, I guess, when the light sort of just catches the internal section of the lens from the camera. It really is a clever bit of camera work there. You can see it just there. It really does look so good, and I really did enjoy this race. I really do think the online lobbies should start moving away from these perfect conditions, because there's so much racing to be done and such amazing sort of camera footage, even just the shine off the surfaces, the dull sort of matte look. Some of the camera angles are absolutely fantastic. I've watched a few from Watkins Glen, Indianapolis, and as you'll see throughout this video, I've got a heck of a lot of footage to go through from last night. I think as soon as the patch landed and as soon as the DLC was available, I got everything downloaded, and I must have been on the Xbox for a good 7 hours. The shoulders definitely feel sore today. Even my legs feel sore from sitting in my bucket seat for such a long period of time. But loads and loads of testing done. Obviously there's lots of talk in the community as well, things that people still aren't happy with, and there are things that I'm not happy with myself. But all in all, I think from this patch that the state of the game has got to be the best that it has ever been since the day that the game was released for me. Obviously we've got rid of the setup glitch where you had to go through the controller. Everything now works from the wheel, so for me that was all they needed to solve in this patch, just add the DLC. But even the force feedback through the wheel, I don't even know if they've done anything with it. Looking at the patch release notes, it doesn't really mention anything to do with the wheel force feedback, but it feels fantastic. Even through slides I feel so much more in control of the car. Racing in the wet was a first for me for quite a while. I have done a setup recently in the wet, so a few things did stand out with setup errors, but I think there was just so much to look at in this video. I just ended up recording footage after footage, hours after hours, so I've got loads to go through and a number of setups. As you can see here, the replays paused just as we're on with finding issues, but you see the blue flag, the green flag's been waved, but for some reason it stays in this like loop, and until you sort of rewind and start again, it doesn't seem to, everything but the cars seem to progress. But even looking at there, at a full 30 cars on the grid, it really was a great race, and just being able to flick through all the cars here. I was driving the Honda NSX, I think it's a 2019, and we've got loads of setups for the Honda in this video as well. I've done a number of setups for every one of the new tracks as well, just last night, so you can see I've been up for quite a while. But there were things that people brought up. We'll just look over a few of these now. I guess issues. One of the issues I found, I kind of filled this whole slot, and I think as soon as you filled your 11 slots, that's it. That's you done for all the space that you've got available. Going into your driver stats and everything, driver ratings, we've still got this issue with not being able to get to your abbreviations, change your name, change your first name. I don't know why you can't do that, but you can do that for your other teammates. Unsafe changes will be last out shot, yes. But looking at your stats, I'm sure we'll be able to see the new circuits. Obviously, a number of laps. I didn't get much chance at Indianapolis, but still, I think setting competitive lap times at each circuit for the night. Obviously, I'm sure we'll get a bit quicker. Obviously, the special events page is still just the one special event, which is a bit disappointing, to be honest. I really don't know why this is being overlooked. But again, it's still there. And I think throughout the evening, I maybe had 6 crashes from the game, a couple of multiplayer crashes, disconnections, and during the initial stage where you're building your reputation or your track medals, one thing that did get pointed out, and I forget the guy's name, I will put a mention of it up on screen, but thank you for letting me know that. In this section you can choose areas of a new circuit that you're wanting to work on, but one of the things that you must enable, I'll try and find where it is now, is this section here, online stats. If it's on multiplayer only, it needs to be in the on position to build your track medals. I don't think it needs to necessarily be on track competency, it could be on any of these, but in order to build medals when you come to new circuits, it needs to be on in the general setting. The online stats needs to be on, not just on multiplayer. Some of the other things that we'll have on screen, once I've gone through all the footage that I've got, is the rear view mirror. It seems very jumpy. As much as it's much brighter than it once was, it's very jumpy. There's lots of frame stuttering within the mirror section itself. Other things I've noticed, which I might have some footage of, is when you are sat just in the pit area, sort of waiting to come out during, let's say, a race weekend session, and you'll come back to get ready to drive out of the garage and the whole circuit has been paused. It's not really a massive issue in terms of game progression, because as soon as you choose to drive out of the pit, time begins again, but obviously it just gets away from that realism, I guess, and obviously trying to find your gap on the circuit to pull out. There's just the cars aren't moving on the circuit. I've seen that on I think 3 circuits now, so it's not just an isolated issue. There was things that got brought up, like the windscreen dirt that seems to have been taken away, but it's just more progressive. I think this was a Daniel Arlotti mention, that the screen dirt does progress over hours really, rather than minutes. And initially I thought it wasn't the best add to the game, the screen dirt, but it does genuinely feel quite realistic as dirt builds up on the screen. But I would like to see that if I operated the windscreen wiper, that it did clear some of that dirt. It can get quite dirty quite quickly, but that seems to be more progressive now anyway. Trying to think of other things. Obviously there's a number of new cars in, a lot of people enjoying the sound of the new Porsche or the Lamborghini, but obviously kind of in different classes. And I think again, Daniel mentioned about the new Ferrari possibly having liveries. I think he was saying there is some GT2 liveries, which I don't particularly see here. Oh yeah, the GT2 there. So whether, I know when I was on COTA, some of these cars came absolutely screaming past me, but whether that's just a progression to, this is kind of what's to come, and there are GT2 cars. Well, we know there's GT2 cars coming to the game. That's no real news, but it's just as and when that's going to happen. I'm assuming maybe possibly April next year, 2023. Still got some of these blurred images, but I guess these aren't important things to iron out just at the moment. But all in all, I think the new update has been a real, probably the best position the game's been in on console for such a long time. I really am kind of happy with it, as much as I'm unhappy about the special events section. Someone was mentioning frame dropping on COTA, but I haven't really noticed it at all. Obviously we've got some massive track limits at COTA, which probably need just slightly widening. I think some areas, even when you've still got two wheels on the surface and you're not completely over the white line, that should be allowable, but in a number of areas the track limits are a little bit excessive. You can see like where the racing line is, and it goes way over the curbs, so that should be the racing line. It should be a little bit wider, I think, especially to get anywhere near that real life track limit. I'm nearly 2 seconds off there, but I was into the 207s at one point last night with a tiny bit of a track limits violation, so possibly getting quicker there anyway. So let's have a look then at a number of these setups. As I did it last time, I'm not going to go into too much detail with each of the setups. I'll try and put some footage of a lap throughout the evening's racing, just so that I'm not doing loads of racing trying to get these laps in during this video. I'll try and add the footage, but we'll quickly look over the setups as they are. So yeah, we'll just jump straight into this one. This is the dry setup. I think I was more like a 207.9 with this. I haven't changed it since naming it there. Obviously getting a little bit harder with the caster. The traction control, I have tried the traction control. I'll go through this now because I've done this for every other circuit. I've tried the traction control on something like what this should recommend: 6 and 6, 7 and 6, 8 and 6. I've tried 8 and 1. Numerous things, but 8 and 0 on the traction control does work really well. Braking again is something that you should always decide yourself. I had this kind of conversation with somebody else. Again, running brakes 2 and 1, try them both. They are both viable options for any kind of racing. 2 is supposed to be more progressive, it's less aggressive, so don't always just opt for brake discs 1. And again, everyone seems to think I have a very forward biased brake balance. That's just my personal opinion on how I brake. It's just how I drive altogether, so you need to really choose that section for yourself. If the setup isn't working for you, I would suggest adjusting the brake balance. On some setups, I think in one of the setups I have got something like 56, which is probably the most forward I have ever had, or the most rearward I have ever set the brakes. So do adjust brakes very much for yourself, and don't always go on what I'm showing you here. That's a personal preference. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I think there's like 96% of my viewers haven't subscribed. So if you found yourself here looking at one of my videos, just pause it and press the subscribe button, press the like button as well. It really would help build the channel. I feel like I've been stuck on 4,300 subscribers for such a long time, building very slowly. But yeah, coming into the dampers, as you can see, you'll find these very similar at most of my circuits in the setups, because it kind of feels like it works around this level. Whether there's small adjustments with the rebound and bump in various circuits, I'm not going to go through them in too much detail. There's a lot of setups to go through. Again, at COTA, I just seem to find a lot of people blast past you on the straights because I'm using so much downforce, but through the twisty stuff I probably leave them like a second and a half behind. So as much time as you think you're making down that long one straight, there is so much cornering through COTA the downforce is way more apparent than needing flat out speed. So just think about that when you are choosing to get rid of some of the rear wing. So that is the setup. I will just share the other setup. If anyone's got a wet race, this was the setup I was using in the wet. Obviously different tyre pressures, different traction control, ABS, different engine map. And you could still use engine map 1, I think. I was looking at some of my engine mapping notes here, and for the old Evo, I haven't got the new one, but map 1 was full power progressive throttle, map 2 was full power linear throttle, and then map 3 was still full power aggressive throttle, 4 was full power very aggressive throttle. So maybe we should be using the map on 4 if you want in very aggressive throttle map. And then again, there's only less power really as we get to 7, which is less power and consumption progressive throttle map, and then 8 is the pace car. So they're all really full power, but I think 5 and 6 is supposed to be like wet weather. So yeah, try them all, see what works for you really. But I'll just fly through these subtle changes, maybe to the ride height. Obviously you always need to run a little bit higher in the wet just to stop any sort of water stopping the aeroflow working properly. So here we are then at COTA, about to take part in an online race, and as you can see I've not particularly qualified in this session, just sort of starting near the back of the grid. Not particularly happy about where it puts you over these rumble sections, the rubbery section, dirty side of the grid. But I'm just going to look at a few things through these races, as well as looking at the setup, seeing what the car's capable of. Just a bit of a scruffy entrance to turn 1, always a place where you can get a little bit bogged down in that turn 1. It's quite a sharp sort of double back on yourself. And I will talk a little bit about the new Ferrari Challenge Cup car, the 488. I had a good blast with that this morning, just hitting Simon Templar again. It seems to be featuring quite heavily in some of my videos. Yoda there just going around the outside and trying to take avoiding action. I just struggled here with my wheel. I just couldn't seem to hit the right gear to get back down into first. And for some reason the engine kind of kept cutting out while I was still moving. I was trying to press the start button all the time and thought I'm going to have to stay still here. But at this point you're probably thinking I'm going to finish way down the grid, but if I told you I actually come second in this race, you'd probably be surprised at this stage, considering that I'm going to take 2 drive-through penalties as well. The track limits on this circuit are absolutely off the scale. As you can hear, someone else did mention that as well, but quite how they've sort of come up with where the track limits are. So if you're looking at that, I was certain that I'd got 2 wheels on the inside of the circuit, but still taking that 3rd warning. So we're just coming up here upon 2 challenge Ferraris, and these really are terrible through the corners. Every part of the setup, and I will do a setup for this car, especially at Monza, because it does kind of perform just as well as the GT3 cars at Monza because of all the straights. But trying to get this car set up here at COTA, I probably hit around a 2:13 lap, which is a long way off the pace for the GT3 cars. But it is absolutely mighty in a straight line, the challenge car. So as you can imagine at Monza, there's a lot of straights that get broken up by corners, but if you can always be coming out of the corner with such a massive advantage on the straights, I would imagine trying to beat a challenge cup car Ferrari at Monza could be quite difficult, and that was certainly a challenge that I led I sort of had this morning some fairly good drivers. I'd say really good drivers, to be honest. They were all hitting very low 150s, almost into the 49s. So certainly pushing me to be consistent in my lap. Just managing to hold off one of the drivers. I think it was I Love 63. So really good, great race. I'll put a little clip of that in my next video as well, because it was literally a photo finish across the line. Proper, really good racing. But we'll try and do a fast lap. Try and point out where I can. As you can see, the car up ahead has got a 2.3 second lead across the line. So just really important to get the car dialed in through this section of the circuit. And as you can see from the setup, I'm running a heck of a lot of rear wing. The car's set up really to carry as much speed through these apexes. Obviously I took a track limits penalty for that one corner through there, but it's such a minor penalty. Obviously we've already got the drive-through, so they still count to the next one. I don't know what happens if I've not saved my drive-through before I get another track limits warning. I'm not sure if I get disqualified. So you can see the 2.3 second lead that he had has been totally diminished really. So just getting the cut back here, knowing where I need to brake, and always braking where you need to brake. Don't get sort of lulled into that false sense of who's going to outbrake who. As long as you're hitting your braking points, you will always make the corner. So last of the late brakers sometimes doesn't work well. So serve that penalty, and as you can see at the back of the grid almost once again. But a lot of people tend to drop out in these long races, so we're down to just, I think, 11 drivers. I'm not sure how many people started it. But always trying to get that tight apex through turn 1, carrying as much speed through this section, trying to get the car as straight as you can here, and then braking in a straight line, coming down through the gears, try and hold third gear through here, and then obviously tightening up this apex because it's more important to get on the power for the exit here, and then tightening up again through here. Can stay in second gear and then trying to carry the speed out there. Obviously taking a track penalty violation again. I didn't really want to pick up another drive through. So braking just after that 100-yard board, get the car slowed down so we can get a really tight apex, and then getting on the power as soon as we can, just letting the car drift out wide. And then I kind of look just along the fence line here for it's like a little marquee that's like a red marquee, and then I brake just at the next lamppost after that marquee there, get the car slowed all the way down to first gear, and then accelerating, and just over this little white line that seems to come across the circuit, getting ready to brake, getting a tight apex once again. Traction control really cutting in there. Very apparent if you're driving in wet weather conditions just how much you kind of need to be not using the traction control so much. You will see later in this video, this little section that I'm sort of narrating over, that we do a section in the wet. But here you can see to be able to cut this curb and not take a penalty. I think I actually get the penalty for going over the curb on the right. But as you can see, we're into the low 2.8s. But the setup, I did do a 2.79, I think. So once again, saving the second of my drive-through penalties.
The penalty is now cleared.
So from this position, I didn't quite have the map up or the leaderboard on the left-hand side to know how many other people had penalties as we come across the line. So it does actually say I finished third, but I am actually second on the leaderboard, which was very surprising. Considering the first lap incident plus the 2 drive-throughs, so kind of never give up really. So just looking at, I always like to come back in just to see how the fastest lap went, and just cutting to see some night footage just to see what the lights are like. I know people were mentioning that the track is still very, very bright, but there is quite a lot of lighting around COTA anyway. the circuit is fairly well lit, so it's not really a good comparison to try your lights off at COTA. It is quite a well lit circuit. And just seeing here as coming out, I'm just using the totally blank hood. So using the F2 button, I've just taken everything off the hood just to see what it felt like driving, especially at night if you're in your room and you're able to turn all the lights off in your bedroom or wherever you've got your rig set up. It is very immersive to get everything off that grid. I know I've got the CPU warning. It's always at 99%. I just had to rerun that section there. The flames coming out the back of that McLaren just looked amazing when I was following it. I know on the replay of the Honda, you've got the exhausts out the back and they do glow really hot red, which is a really nice touch, I think. But this is definitely the best corner to overtake the AI. I don't know whether it is in an actual race, but that seems to be in this little race that I have here. It seems to be the best place to overtake. And you'll see there I just lowered the brake balance to 44. I thought I was actually going to do a full lap warming the tyres, and I was going to show you how I go about warming the tyres, but I usually bring the balance all the way rearward, so to 44 is the most rearward you can set the brake balance, and then I just ride the brake whilst warming the tyres, so you actually get the brake paddle, the brake discs actually glowing red hot. It'll be down in the graphic, you'll see they get totally bright red, but that heat then generates, it transfers into the carcass of the tyre. So it really is the best way to warm the tyres if you've got a full lap, opening up your race. But I really did get caught out at the start of this race with the wrong brake balance. I thought we were literally going to cross the line and I'd have a chance to change the brake balance, which was a bit of a misfortune on my part. But this is the AI as per usual, running I think at about 100% skill level and 99% aggression or something like that. As you can see, again, coming off this corner, you just get a much better exit than the AI, and they all seem to do that same kind of line. It looks beautiful on the replay as well. As you come out of that corner, the sparks just flying everywhere. It's the replays are really something special, I think, especially at some of these new circuits. From what I've seen so far, there's a lot of thought gone into how the camera looks. I certainly didn't think I was outside the track there, track limit penalty, but happy to finish and take that first place. Always a nice feeling. But yeah, looking at the replay, if you go into the replay straight from the race just like this, and you actually just push up from the menu, you can actually just watch the replay straight after the races. And as you'll see, we've got all wheels intact, all alloys are intact if you watch the highlights straight after the race. But I think if you record the race or record the race highlights, and as I did mention, the save highlights or save replay button does work. So for those that do league races and they actually record all the highlights and all the replays from every lap of the race, that button is actually working again. So it's good to see that back in the game. Good to see the setups, no issues with the setups anymore. You can just load your setups and save them without having to go through the controller option again. So yeah, just looking some of these beautiful camera angles, especially this one. It's got to be one of my favourites, especially in the wet, and you've got all the light display, especially here at COTA. I think the night races do hold something special, and just a beautiful effect there. Absolutely love that. I had to once again just rewind it, bit of a slow-mo as the cars come through here, just scraping the under tray, sparks flying, cars just going through it, even wipes a path through the sparks. It's absolutely beautiful little touches that they've made. But as you can see here in the wet, a very challenging race with the AI on 100%. I'd certainly need to do a heck of a lot more with the setup and just coming to terms with driving in the wet, especially you can see the traction control at 9 there. At TC 10 it just engages the traction control too much, but 9 seems to make it slide a bit, so maybe I need to adjust the TC cut and just add a little bit more there. But very hard to navigate the circuit in the medium rain conditions that I've got, but a very challenging race that was thoroughly enjoyable. Again, looking at the replay, just blown away with how this looks on the Series X. Just absolutely stunning. I know there's some people on the Series S console that have said there's a lot of pop-in from various items around the circuit, whether it's draw distances or stuff like that, that's an issue. Some people complaining on the Series S, but the whole approach for me getting the Series X console was to, just get the most from the console really, and I knew that would be evident as we start to push the envelope within these consoles. But as you can see, all the alloys intact on this replay. I love that effect, I really do. The like internal glass and just the rain on the floor there. It's just amazing. The foreground textures really. It just looks so fluid, 60 frames per second. And again, the fireworks even, just stunning. I really did enjoy. Just cycle through a couple of the camera angles that we've got in game or in the replay. Just love how the water's just passing off the rear wing, just sort of showing you that sort of drag, and the overhead sort of helicopter view as well. Just looks really, really fluid. You can kind of see where I'm sort of catching the AI here as well. And then looking at I guess it's the controller view. And then we've got the in-car view. Love how the water just sort of smears on the edges of the windscreen. But I'll just show you a quick sort of demo really as to what I was on about. Once you sort of load in a saved replay, obviously we're missing those alloys again, so maybe something. I think we're actually missing the brake pads as well, the brake discs, which would usually be glowing red hot. So it's a little bit disappointing, but there's so much gone into this patch just to release the DLC and get some of the fixes done. I think Untold Games really are heading in the right direction with the game really, the patches and everything. They're actually listening to the community. I think they're trying to resolve things, so I think it is all credit to them really for getting the game looking as good as it does. So that was that. Let's move to the next circuit. I absolutely loving Watkins Glen as well. So we'll move to the Watkins Glen setup. As you can see there, 145, still a long way off the pace. Still trying to find grip through the rear of the car in some of the corners. So these are very much work in progress. Obviously, it's just last night doing these setups. So as you can see, 144.9 was what I did with this setup. And again, I'm just going to fly through it. Areas of the braking, again, you might want to adjust these. And maybe even just softening out the rear of the car a little bit more. I do find that it's more about getting the traction down out of some of the corners. As you can see, the manoeuvrability just slightly lowering the rebound, just to get just to stop the oversteer really coming out of some of the corners. But again, just I think it just could do with a little bit more rear grip. Maybe just subtle adjustments. Maybe you could adjust the anti-roll bar, stiffening up the front. Still not 100% perfect setup, but that is the setup that I'm running. Still obviously being able to get into the 144s. So if you're struggling there, that is the setup. So here we are again at Watkins Glen, as you can see, qualifying numerous times on pole in the 145s. I have been in the 144s. You can see a bit of the glitch in there in the rear view mirror, but Dotman 26 did set quite a good lap time. But again, getting me to run in the dirty part of the circuit for P1, which isn't really a bonus. Maybe even coming in second place would be better for Watkins Glen. So there's numerous areas of this circuit. I absolutely love it. It's been a firm favourite all the way back from when I was on Project Cars 2. I used to spend a lot of time testing at Watkins Glen, and we will look over throughout this next lap areas that you really need to concentrate on to get this lap as quick as a 145, 144, hopefully at some point into the 143s as well. So you see the lead that Dotman's got just up ahead, and you'll see how quickly I close it down through this section. Trying to get good traction through this corner is an absolute must, so when you're setting your cars up, always think about the traction off some of these corners. Maybe trying to soften the anti-roll bar a little bit. Obviously you'll see I'm running absolute max rear wing. Using all the circuit as well, Dotman doesn't seem to use the full area of the circuit to his advantage really, all the way out to the right hand side there. Again here, just carrying as much speed into this corner and out of the corner as well, which is going to force you wide. You should be using the full circuit. Again here, clipping that inside apex, and it just kind of leaves the right hand side of this circuit open really, and you can sweep into this corner, braking at the 200-yard board, trying to pick up that inside corner to sort of catapult you out onto the long back straight. So we'll go for a full lap here, fastest lap as we can, braking at the 200-yard board, try and pick up that inside curb if you can. Don't let the car run too wide or you'll pick up a track limits penalty. Sometimes hold fourth gear through here if it's okay to really, but I'm able to shift up into fifth in the Honda. Depending on the weather conditions, track temperatures, I sometimes stay just in fifth gear, absolutely maxed out, braking at the 300 board, and this is just holding third gear through here really. You could be sort of bouncing on the rev limiter. As soon as you pass that Marshall's post, you're absolutely flat out. Braking just before the little path on the right hand side there, down into second, hugging that inside curb. And such important corners, this next series, to sort of carry the speed up the hill and then not let the car drift out too wide. As you can see, the tyres getting really hot and not the best pressures at all. I think I've scrubbed the tyres far too much. There is a lot more emphasis on trying to look after your tyres in 1.8, so you'll sometimes find that you need to just back off for a couple of laps if you're going to try and go for another fast lap, just to get the tyres to cool down a little bit. You can see here very close to hitting the 144s. I think this was the last lap in this particular race. Just really trying to push every single corner to try and hit that 144. So across the line. So just some little bits to replay. The grass there, absolutely stunning. And just the focus, sort of in focus, and just along the railings there on the left hand side. I love how it reflects the car as well. Just looking at it in slow motion again, you can see the reflection just off the side. The fencing really is a nice touch, I think. The smoke in the background. But yeah, really enjoying Watkins Glen. Another little race that we're going to look at to give you an idea of a couple of other aspects of Watkins Glen. You see there, I'm just warming the brakes, just riding the brake with the brake pedal at the start of the race, and you'll see that heat in the front brakes, and it just sort of radiates out into the tyre and it gets the tyres up to temperature much quicker than sort of weaving back and forward, trying to, I know it's what they would do in reality, they would kind of weave and brake and weave and brake, but obviously it's a simulator, so you would just ride the brake pedal, not something you would do in the real world, as it would just glaze the brake disc, and the brake disc would be far less effective, but obviously in a game we don't suffer with that consequence. So we did a full lap there behind the leader here, and you'll see just coming through the section, just totally taking far too much curb land and really out of shape. And once again, with this little spin, I am actually going to win this race from this position. So even never give up, that's what I would say. But you'll see the tyres have took a huge amount of heat through the spin that I had. You see they're totally overpressured at the rear, front, left, even all the tyres at the moment are just overpressured, and all that heat that was generated in the spin is going to radiate through the tyre, and they actually get hotter. The PSI goes higher and higher, and it really is a case of having to nurse the tyres back into the temperature window again. So you see getting a much better drive off that last corner, and the lead car there just taking a run wide. Not sure whether that was him taking a run wide or just some small error, but again the two cars up ahead, this section of the circuit, they really do seem to struggle, but we'll catch them very shortly. Again, always just trying to use as much of the circuit as you can. I think there was a number of occasions behind, I think it's Barnes in or something like that. I kind of have to back off a little bit to get my tyres cooled down again. He is still setting some good lap times, but in a lot of areas I am quite quicker than him, but I can't seem to find an area to overtake. But it'll certainly become apparent how quickly I catch him through the next section. I'd probably say it's sector 2, sector 3. So just coming into sector 2, carrying as much speed through this chicane, riding as much of the inside of the curbs as you can. And I wouldn't suggest going up to 4th there either. I did do just while I was kind of learning how the car performs in these early stages at the circuit. And it's best to run not so deep into that corner. Obviously you can see we've caught Barnes quite quickly from the gap that he did have. It's such an important corner, this one. I don't know the names of any of the corners at the moment, but the car feels so light through that corner. Getting the traction out of the rear is fairly difficult. Again here the front of the car understeers quite a bit, but Barnes seems to use much more of the circuit than Dotman did in the earlier race. Again, just trying to carry 4th gear through here, down to 3rd. Not particularly the best lines following another car. The aero is still affected, but we're just kind of getting that itch really to want to get past. You can see the tyres have cooled somewhat. Still not perfect at the rear. Pressure wise, you really want to be looking for that 27.8. Well, I think it's probably between 27.5 and 27.8, but I can carry so much speed through there. I really feel like I've kind of stayed behind Barnes long enough really, and we're just going to try and make a lunge down the inside here.
Clear on the left.
And then we've got VR7, a good group of guys that I've raced quite a lot with. A good team at VR7, I think. Again, just using as much of the circuit as you can. All that inside, early on the power. And again, turn 1 is certainly a corner you really need to practice, because the more speed you can carry through this corner, it translates all the way out onto this circuit, and just it seems to have taken the wide line here, but there's a lot of rubble out on that left hand side of the circuit. It is much better line from the right hand side. So I think we're going to either finish the race here or go for another flat out lap. So yeah, just looking at another section, I think, just how quickly, again, coming off this last corner. I think this was looking at the rear view mirror as well. Another section where it just seems to be flickering quite a lot. I'm not sure if the frame rate of the rear view mirror is actually 30 frames per second or something. I don't know, the refresh rate's different, but you can see there's quite a lot of that seems to be happening in the rear view mirror. Whether it's just a ping issue, I don't know. But yeah, really enjoying Watkins Glen. Moved to Indianapolis. Didn't really get much chance to race at Indianapolis last night. The lobbies just didn't seem to be I guess there to be able to try. There just didn't seem to be that much action at Indianapolis, or maybe I just missed it. So 1:36. I don't even know if that is the best lap that I was able to do. Maybe some subtle changes. Brake balance slightly different, a little bit harder at the front, dampers slightly higher at the rear, a little bit less downforce at this circuit. I didn't particularly feel like the rear end was stepping out too much. So that was that one, and I think I've got a couple of other ones that we did. Spent a lot of time at the Nurburgring, so I'll just quickly look at this setup. Definitely into the 155s with this setup. I should have a lap with that footage. So much footage to go through. I really don't know how I'm going to piece this video together, but two setups here that managed to get me the same lap time with subtle changes. So obviously there you can see I'm using brake discs too, so very don't always discount them. And I'm not sure if on one of them I've got a slightly softer anti-roll bar. So if you've come through on this one, that is that, and this was a slightly softer anti-roll bar. So I'll start from the beginning. I'll just go through them. So you'll see on the lap footage. I spent a lot of time at the Nurburgring just getting to grips with the circuit, trying to find where the best lines are. So here we are then at the Nurburgring, and we haven't got any online footage, I don't think. We're just going to be looking at two flat out laps. As you can see in the top left corner, we've got a 55.8 in the predicted lap time. Spent quite a lot of time on this setup, so we will talk very much about it in the next lap and in this one. Running as wide as a dare stair, really. Always pick up that inside curb, get one set of tyres on the inside of the curb. Don't always need to hit the outside curb there on that exit. Braking just after the cones on the right hand side that would usually be there. And a very tricky corner to hold third gear. And always treat this one as two corners, in my opinion. Two shifts down on the gearbox, but we'll discuss that in a minute. Slightly slow the lap down a little bit. Always trying to carry a really wide line here and getting this late apex. A late apex really is, you're kind of not wanting to clip the actual apex of the corner. It's slightly later around the corner, so you're carrying more speed out of the corner, and there seems to be quite a lot of that at the Nurburgring. using as much of that inside corner as you can, and again here, like I said, another late apex corner, trying to make that corner as wide as you can. And the last corner is very much the same, it's almost more apparent on the last corner. So braking just after the 100-yard board, or sort of between the 50, not quite at the 50, I probably am a little bit late on the brake there, and a little bit out of shape for that last chicane. But as you can see here, you're hitting a late apex on the corner. Still over the line for a 1:55.7, and a very tricky lap to be consistent in the 1:55s. But something, especially AOR, you really need to be in the 1:55s, but online I think 1:56s are very competitive. So braking at this 100-yard board, trying to get on the left hand side as much as you can, trying to get an early apex through the turn 1, and then get the car out on the right hand side. Not much brake pedal here, it's almost the tiniest of touches, sometimes no brake pedal. As far wide as you can on the right, braking just as the sort of asphalt runs out on the right hand side there, and always picking up this inside curb. Run the car straight away across to the right hand side, and then I'll sometimes drop to TC1 on that exit. Braking here just as the tarmac ends on the right hand side and hugging for third gear, and then just looking, sort of braking here down to second, and then where the tarmac turns a lot darker, we're dropping to second first, and then straight away on the power really, using all that curb on the left hand side, and then just kind of spotting your own braking point here, down into the long hairpin, and then like I see a bit of a wider line than hugging that internal line. It gets a much stronger exit. Not really picking up any curb on the right hand side there, and I don't really want to pick up that inside curb on this lap. But braking here just as the board at the 100-yard board, but don't really run the tyres on the right hand side of that too much. It's like a grass sort of asphalt which doesn't have a lot of traction. And again, trying to pick up this inside curb, a very important corner to master that one, so you're carrying all that speed out along this straight. The tiny kinks are relevant, but braking just really in the middle here, sort of, you want to get the car settled before you hit this chicane really. It's not the best example, that chicane. And then again picking up this last late apex for, as I mentioned, nearly a 1:55.6. And that's the Nurburgring. And I'll try and go through them as best I can in my video. The other circuit that I spent some time on was Zolder, setting a 129.2. So again, just coming to the setup. So just going through there. Like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail. The video will be just way too long. So please just use the setups where you will. Enjoy them. So just arriving here at Zolder. Braking is we're absolutely maxing out in fourth gear. Trying to pick up this inside curb with two tyres really, run the car wide. Braking just as we've maxed out in third gear again. Just carrying that speed. Get the car settled if you can. Just in third gear, pick up that inside curb and then back on the power. Power, power, power all the way down here. And braking just after the 100-yard board. Trying not to touch any of these curbs at all, it really does unsettle the car. But you can carry second gear through there if you dare. Get the car nice and straight, braking, using all this curb on the inside, running over the two sort of sleeping policemen. A very quick lap, no time to really think at Zolder. not using all that exit, braking at the 100-yard board, get the car slowed down, and then powering out of this exit, drop into TC1. And then I think we're braking just after this 100-yard board again. Heavy on the brake pedal again, picking up these two sleeping policemen, and then trying to miss those two on the right hand side.
Yellow flag in sector 1.
And cross the line.
Be careful.
Almost into the 128s, but not quite.
The fastest lap so far.
There's obviously a lot of time spent, a number of evenings really, getting to grips with these. And this is really is very early stages in progress, just into the 219s with this setup, but taking a little bit of time to get this dialed in yesterday. Obviously, I think I've only ran one session in the car. Slightly higher traction control for some reason on this one. It just seemed to be scrubbing the rear tyres. Obviously you can see the brake balance. I did think when I came to do this setup, because it was just after the patch, before I downloaded any of the DLC, and I thought we were actually moving closer to PC with the way the brake balance is, because on PC usually I think people are in like 52% brake balance here, and I'm just never going to see that with the way the car feels for me. So as you can see, much higher to get through Eau Rouge without scraping too much, trying to use as little rear wing as I could, but really couldn't get it much lower than that. Still very slidey at the rear of the car, going into Pouhon especially, just very gentle on the brake. So yeah, there you go. So I am going to try and piece together a video all about 1.8.4.1. But if you've got any questions, or if you've got anything you want to discuss on the channel, please do leave stuff in the comments. Definitely looking forward to more from the game. Slightly disheartened to hear the project cars, just going off on another tangent, the project cars franchise has been totally scrapped by EA now. I think it was Ian Bell that was the founder of Project Cars. I'm sure he was moving to say that he was going to create something GTR, some other chain of sim racing content, but obviously you're probably talking another 4 years down the line to get another game out. I know they were working on the next Project Cars 4. Whether that's going to come, we've got no idea really. I think there's other things like Assetto Corsa Competizione and Assetto Corsa 2 and many other games to come before anything from the Project Cars team would ever come to console. So I think we've got probably more chance of Automobilista actually coming to console than the next Project Cars 2 iteration. So I think sad to see it leave. I don't even know if you can still purchase it in the online store on Xbox, but if it's a game you've never picked up, I'd certainly suggest picking up Project Cars 2. There's a number of classes of races in there that you're never going to get anywhere else. But for me, I can't see myself moving away from Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's just so realistic for me. The immersion for the game, especially in the weather conditions. Please, people that are putting lobbies, creating lobbies, create some with weather. Create some at different times of day. There's so much more to this game than just racing around in the dry. And I know a lot of people are just chasing lap times constantly in the best conditions ever, but a lot of the racing is fantastic in the wet, and some of the graphics and the replays just look phenomenal in the wet for me. But yeah, thanks very much to the team, Untold Games, working to get this game as best it can be on console. It definitely is getting there. You're definitely on the right track. A lot of issues for a lot of people, I think, solved with this patch. So I definitely think you should give yourselves a pat on the back. but I'll try and piece together a video, whether it's available in the next 2 or 3 days. I'm not sure how I'm going to put all the footage I've got together for this video. But yeah, I'll give it a try. But until next time, if you again push that subscribe button, if you're here watching this and you're not a subscriber, get that button pressed. And thanks for watching. Ciao for now.